the norm is not always right. The norm is not always the thing that is going to make you happy. And that's what we need to think about as well, is are you really living your life and going to continue to decide things in your business and how you show up and how you live your life? Are you really going to do that for somebody else? You're listening to the From Imposter to Empowered podcast. I'm your host, Jill Perrick, a business and mindset coach who specializes in imposter syndrome. If you feel like you're not as smart, capable, or worthy as you actually are, and that someone is going to find you out, then you've come to the right place. I went from being a struggling government worker, working my coaching business on the side, but feeling unworthy and burnt out, to making multiple six figures helping women overcome imposter syndrome so they too can sign clients, make bank, and have the business or career of their dreams. I am nothing special. I have a stuttering disability, ADHD, and I struggle with anxiety and depression. So if I can learn how to feel good enough and overcome my inner imposter, then so can you. Let's dig in. When I first left my job, it was spring 2021, and I had been working from home for about a year, and they had talks about us coming back to the office. And before COVID, I often talk about that story where it was a meeting that we were all in, and I was standing around like the circle of everybody in the unit that I was currently working in. And for those of you who don't know, I used to work for the government. I used to work for specifically the police, and I was a civilian, and I loved a lot of the jobs that I did. I have like a really good skill with like technology, and I did a lot of like data entry and doing reports, and like I loved like the criminal side of things. That is something that I often talk about, that I actually didn't like hate my job, but I hated like the confines and like the structure of having a full-time job and needing to clock in, being at work the majority of my fucking life. I also had worked a lot of jobs where I used to have to work overnights, or I would have to work on weekends and holidays, and that's just not the life that I saw for myself. And when I also thought about like my quality of life, I really am like a day-to-day quality of life person, and I want to talk about that in a second as well. But I was standing up in this meeting, and everybody was around me, and for a second, because I had had my coaching business for a couple of years at this point, I was thinking to myself, there might be a time where I'm not here anymore, like where I don't have a full-time job anymore and I work for myself. And my stomach dropped, and I was like, I just can't imagine ever doing that. Like I can't imagine ever having the courage to actually leave my job, to actually be responsible for making my own money. That was fucking crazy. Fast forward a year, and I was sending an email to my supervisor saying I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice. And I had to call my parents and I had to tell them. And that to me was a big deal, because my parents are children of immigrants, and they have, well, actually, my dad is an entrepreneur, but like it's a family business. He's been doing it for years. So there is a lot of stability there. And my mom actually worked at the organization that I worked at as well for like 37 years until she retired like in 2023. So my parents had a very like stable job mentality. They weren't thrilled that I left my job, but c'est la vie. It's not their life. It is mine. So I did all the things, put in my 2 weeks notice, and I had to do a lot of admin associated to leaving my job. I had to hand in my 2 weeks notice. I had to hand in my badge. I had to go in and get all my stuff. I had to have a couple of meetings, all that stuff, right? So I did all of that stuff, and I remember having like a couple meetings, and there was this coworker who I was working with, and she said to me like, I think it's really cool that you're doing this. And I was like, thank you, because people had opinions about it. They were like, oh, are you sure that the internet's gonna be around still? I'm like, I'm pretty fucking positive the internet's still gonna be around. But like, I worked with a lot of older people, so they all had their differing opinions about me leaving and blah, blah. And that's totally fine, right? So this woman in particular was like, I am very, very proud of you. And to hear her say that, this was not somebody who I was particularly close with, but I thought it was super sweet. And she was like, years ago, I like started a business and I just never had the courage to leave. So I think it's really amazing that you are doing this. And that always has stuck with me, that the courageous decision is not always going to be the decision that feels good. And it's not always going to be the popular decision amongst other people. Like, I even had a friend, a super close friend, be like, but like, what about maternity leave? Like, what about if blah, blah, blah? And I was just like, how about good job? I'm proud of you. You've got this. Like, I don't need to be like convincing one of my really close friends that this is a decision that I should be making. But regardless, what I realized in doing that is that everybody is going to have their own opinions about it. And I was coaching one of my clients on this a couple of weeks ago. It was my one-to-one client, and we were having a discussion around her identity around making $10K a month. For some reason, her beliefs just don't align with somebody who is making $10K a month. And she says, like, when I think about it, like, I know if I was doing that, I would be so proud of myself. I would be so proud of the business that I built. But like, for some reason, I just can't see myself making $10K a month. And $10K is nothing to laugh at. It's a big fucking deal, but it's also a drop in the bucket. You can make $15K, $20K, $30K, $50K. The sky is the limit when it comes to owning this kind of business. But when we did some digging deeper, she had a lot of thoughts about what other people, especially her family, thought about her business and thought about like her doing this. And there were a lot of things that I said in our conversation, but one thing that I really focused on was the fact that like people are always going to have their thoughts, but you need to choose the discomfort of dealing with somebody's judgment on Thanksgiving Day, or dealing with like one of your parents having an opinion and saying it to you like once a week or something like that, right? I would rather deal with that discomfort than spend every day not choosing the decision that was best for me, right? But a lot of the time, people will rather feel comfortable around their family members, around their friends, around the environment that they're in. They will choose the comfort of somebody being able to understand them instead of going after what makes them happy and what they truly want to be doing. It is our worst nightmare to be misunderstood, especially as an ADHD girly. Being misunderstood is my fucking kryptonite. Like, I hate being misunderstood. When somebody says that they don't understand what I'm saying, and this is twofold because I also have a stutter. So sometimes if somebody will communicate to me like, I don't really understand what you're saying, whether it's related to my stutter or whether it's just like related to something I said, I get irrationally triggered around it, because it is such a trigger to not be understood. And I had to understand how that related to the business, realizing that I put myself in a situation where I own a business that not a lot of people are going to understand, that a lot of the time people are going to judge, right? That a lot of the time, because people don't understand, they're going to create their own description of it, or they're trying to figure it out themselves, right? And it doesn't matter how much money I've made. It doesn't matter if I've had a 15K month, a 20K month, whatever. It still won't make sense to a lot of people. And even I remember the first time I hit a 20K month, and I was sitting, it was around the fall. So I think it was like Canadian Thanksgiving. And I told my family about it. And this is years ago now. It was 2021. So I was still in a stage where like I was telling my family about like my things in the business because I was like still seeking that validation from them. So I was like, yep, hit my first 20K month. And the only thing that anyone had to say was, oh my God, the taxes are going to be huge on that thing. And like at first I was very disappointed and I was a little bit sad because I was like, they quickly just moved on to like the bad things about this. Or my grandma would say something like, well, is that even like sustainable, right? And first of all, I was like, you guys are so fucking annoying. But I have a family that is very similar to a lot of your guys' families too. And I'm just telling you this because I need you to understand that there will be no dollar amount that is going to be able to validate you the way that you need to validate yourself. When you run your own business, you have to realize that you're doing it for you. And now all your shit around being seen, around being validated, around being understood by the people in your personal life, you need to learn how to get the fuck over that, because that is going to hold you back if that is of your highest importance. Instead of realizing that your business and the content you create and how you show up and who you serve, that is of highest importance when it comes to your business. And you are not creating content for your friends from high school to see. You are not creating content thinking like, oh, grandma's gonna see this post, right? Like I have told you guys the story about how when I first started, my dad would like call me and he'd be like, stop swearing in your post. And I'd say, stop looking at my fucking posts. Like, I was just like so annoyed with him because he would call me and he would call me unprofessional and he would have all these opinions about the content I was creating. And I had to stand firm in, he doesn't get it. I am being authentically me. This is how I fucking talk and this is how I communicate. And he just had an idea of what professionalism looked like. He had an idea about like what he thought. And I had to stand firm in that, even though there was this inner child part of me that of course just wanted her dad's validation, right? So really understanding that there is going to be a dichotomy between the version of you that does seek out the opinions of others and the version of you that is trying to grow a successful online business. There is a version of you, there is an identity that you have to step into. And we talked about that on last week's podcast episode. We talked about like being in the identity of a business owner. And sometimes that is not going to align with the way you're comfortable being seen by the other people in your life. But as I was talking to this client, how I was communicating this to her is I care about my everyday life. Like I care about the fact that I get to do whatever the fuck I want to do all day long, all week long. It feels like a personal offense when I have to do something that I don't want to do during the week because I am currently child free. I run my own business. I create my own schedule. So every day I get to get up in the morning and do whatever the fuck I choose to do. And having ADHD, sometimes it is kind of a fucking prison because there are times where I'm like, I need to get into a routine. And then as soon as I have a routine, I need to rebel against the routine. But I am never not grateful that I get to choose what I get to do every single day. And there's people in my life that have been almost saying like, you don't have a job. And I'm like, how does somebody who makes 20K a month not have a job? That's insane, right? But it's also jealousy. It's also judgment. We also have to remember that it's such like a unique thing that we're doing. This is very new. Within the last 10 years, people have been able to stay home because of their online businesses, because of how they show up online, and they get to create their own schedules and not have to work for the dollar on the hour kind of shit. Like it is very new. And for a lot of older people who are our grandparents, who are our parents, sometimes our siblings, our cousins, all of this, like, it is just not the norm. But the norm is not always right. The norm is not always the thing that is going to make you happy. And that's what we need to think about as well, is, are you really living your life and going to continue to decide things in your business and how you show up and how you live your life? Are you really going to do that for somebody else? Or are you going to be able to make the simple shift in thought and think to yourself, oh, okay, I am putting somebody else's opinion of me, even if it's somebody who you really love and really respect, right? Like, I love my parents, I love my grandparents, I respect them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are correct when it comes to how I want to live my life. And I was saying this to my client too, when we were having this conversation. I was saying that, like, everybody has been talking about me having a fucking baby after we had the wedding, right? It's like, as soon as you do it, they're like, okay, now that you're married, time to pop out a couple kids. I'm in my early 30s. So yeah, it makes sense to them because that's how our grandparents, that's how our parents lived their lives. As soon as they could, because they thought this is just what you do, they started having children, right? But now we're seeing like a difference in the way that women are approaching parenthood and choosing when they decide to have kids. And also the advances in science and research tells us that like, it's okay if you don't have kids right away. You have time. But my family has a lot of opinions about that. And my parents are like, we want a lot of grandchildren and blah, blah, blah. And like, there is a part of me that is like, oh, should we just start trying now because everybody says we should, and it would be like such a happy occasion and it would be so fun, blah, blah, blah. And then I think about, but what do I want? And that's not always a conscious decision, right? A lot of the time we do things because we think that it'll make other people happy, or we think it'll make other people comfortable or want to be around us more, etc., etc. But all of this to say, you have to bring it back to, what do I want? What will make me happy? And how will it serve the future version of me? And truly, to bring it back to that conversation with this client, her believing that she couldn't have a 10K month, it has everything to do with the fact that how she currently values her family's opinions or the opinions of others, and how she runs her business and what she's doing as a business owner. She is putting that of very high importance and a very high value, and that doesn't align with the version of her that makes 10K a month. And this is why I love coaching so much, because like, we wouldn't have been able to uncover this if we weren't having these conversations around identity, around the beliefs that my client was having. And these are the kinds of conversations and the deep reprogramming and rewiring that we do in my one-to-one coaching or in the Real Deal group coaching program, which is formerly the From Imposter to Empowered program. I was talking about that last week, but I changed the name from the From Imposter to Empowered program to the Real Deal. So if you are ready to do this rewiring work so you can align your identity and your beliefs to the version of you that makes 10K months, 15K months, 20K months, who has a solid business that she is committed to, that she is growing, that she is excited to get up each day and work on, then come and work with me inside of one-to-one coaching or the Real Deal group coaching program. You can go to the link in my show notes and check out my offers there. There are a couple options to work with me one-to-one, and there is, of course, as I said, the Real Deal group coaching program where we rewire your mind. We have you step into that next level version of yourself. You learn the strategy, the content, the sales, the launching that is going to help you to overcome imposter syndrome, step into your leadership era, and truly sign high ticket clients and bring in those higher cash months. So all the links are at the link in my show notes. I love you guys so much, and I will see you next week.